And we wake up and he's fully dressed with his suitcase and he says, I'm leaving, I'm going home. And he left, he walked out. So it just was just, I didn't know what to think, because we had been married 4 years at this point. We had never had an argument the whole entire marriage. And people think, oh, there must have been something going on. We never had an argument until that same week. We had an argument that week because, I had been at the hospital with my dad. I was taking care of him. And it was, you've been gone all day kind of thing, which was unusual because we never argued. And then also that week, I had turned down a job at, a well-known university. And I said, well, they're not offering enough, so I'm just going to turn it down. And he just yells, like, how much money do you need anyway? So all in that week, things started to kind of uncrumble and like just fall apart. And it didn't make sense. Fast forwarding, it made sense in the end only because he had done it before. And it wasn't
Oh,
the first time that he had done this so-called disappearing act. And so, but of course, I don't know this at the time. So I'm just on this vacation and, I'm not going to go chasing someone down the highway. So we just finished our vacation. We went to the beach, we went go-kart riding, we did everything we were supposed to do. And when I get home, I'm thinking he's home because he said he was going home. I said, I'll figure it out, when I
mm-hmm.
get there. But I get home and he's not there. It's like he was never there. He had packed up all of his things and he was just gone. Um, and so I ended up writing a formal complaint to my community, the Muslim community. And I wrote it as an indictment and I charged him
Right.
with abandonment and desertion. And I told him this is what I want because he was a, prominent person, so-called, in the community. He was one of the leaders that gave services and prayers. And so I wrote this indictment and charged him. And then I filed, in court. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just a very crazy time. Like I said, I was taking care of my dad. It was during COVID, and we had moved the family to Virginia to take my dad out of the nursing home. It was at that time where you had to talk to your loved ones through a window.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was 80
Oh, it's like COVID.
at
Yeah.
the time. And
Okay.
so I said, well, we can't, this is not going to do. And so he was living with us. So all of the, long story short, I ended up writing my book, Hidden in Plain Sight. It's a double entendre because it talks about how people have a whole hidden life. They have one persona they have for the public, that they are respectable, um,
Nice.
you know, nice, members
Well
of the
off.
community. They're educated, they have careers, they have families, they have friends, they have community, and then they live a whole different life. And so that's why the book is called Hidden in Plain Sight, because not only are they hiding in plain sight among the community, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Catholic, their abuse is hidden in plain sight because
Mm-hmm.
people think if you don't have a black eye, a bloody nose, a busted lip, that you're okay, but they never consider the other forms of abuse, like mental and psychological abuse, as well as financial abuse. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is why the book is called Hidden in Plain Sight. But fast forward, I ended up, after I wrote that complaint, it kind of went viral. And I was offered an opportunity to write 7-week series of columns in the Muslim Journal about abandonment in the Muslim community. After that, to social media, I was getting, emails and phone calls and messages from other women to say, hey, you only talked about Muslims. It happens to us
Right.
too. And so that's when I didn't intend to write a book, but I actually wrote the book and interviewed women who are Muslim, Christian, and Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
Black, white, and Hispanic about the grooming process. By profession, I'm a policy analyst, and so I analyzed the policy and procedure of grooming, and
Mm.
intentionally picked because people think, oh, these must be people who are on the outskirts of community. They're not employed or they're not grounded in the community. They don't have families. But these people in my book, they're all true stories. This is, a book of nonfiction.
Right.
They are grounded in community, psychiatrists, and a Division I basketball coach, educated with a PhD, a high school principal, people that you think are safe. They look good on paper,
And they're
but
public figures too, it
and the
seems
public
like.
figures, and this
Yeah.
is how they get away with it. But you
Right.
really have to have nothing to lose, which was me, because, I said, I'm just going to expose the whole thing. And so every time we went to court, I would bring members of the Muslim community with me. and they tried to close the courtroom. And I said, oh, well, if you don't like that, I'm just going to fill the courtroom.
Mm.
And so because these people get away with it because, they groom not only you, they groom your parents, your siblings, your family, your
Right.
friends, neighbors, your coworkers, the kids, the dog, the cat. They're
It's
grooming
a
everyone around you.
psychological operation.
Exactly. The only thing
Psyop.
new about it is you. They're doing the same thing over and over again, but you're like the new piece
Right.
of the puzzle, and you don't know that you're being groomed.
So
Right.
that's a lot to
I,
unpack. Go ahead, Ken.
it
Yes.
is. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. So my first thought when she was saying that, he went home and said he'll be there when you get there, or thinking he would be there when you get there,
But that's what
and he
he
was like,
said.
right, okay. And then when you get there, it's like my first thought was premeditated, as in he
Oh
had
yeah.
already thought this thing out. There was no trace of him existing in your home when you got back home, right? Go
Yes,
ahead.
in fact, the whole vacation had been planned, and I'm kind of bouncing around, but in the end, there was
Mm-hmm.
evidence that he had planned his return before we even went on the trip.
Mm.
Oh.
So
Right.
So
yeah.
I wanna jump back to like that week. You said you was married for 4 years.
Mhm.
Didn't really have arguments except for like that last week. And you said your father was sick, so you was visiting him, and he had a problem with that. And then he had a problem with you turning down a job or
Job.
looking for a job.
I was turning down a job because I was in the federal government. I was retiring during COVID because I worked at Health and Human Services, and we were swamped. But I'm taking care of my father in the home, and he's
Right.
terminally ill. So I said, well, I'm just going to go ahead and retire, which was our plan. It wasn't that
Hmm.
I just
Right.
arbitrarily decided to do it. That I would retire and take care of my dad to end of life because he was terminally ill, and then I would go back to work.
Hmm.
And so in the meantime, got an offer from Old Dominion University, and I was like, they're not, offering enough, and so I'm just gonna let that slide, let that go, And he just kind of blew up, which was out of the ordinary. And he's like, how much
Yeah.
money do you need anyway? And he's
Right.
trying to make me feel bad and saying, well, I didn't know when it comes to narcissists, you never know in the whole relationship, you're in competition with them, but you don't know it because you're thinking you're in
Mm.
a loving relationship. And when I do well, you do well. And when you do well, I do well. But
Right.
with a narcissist, they're always in competition with you. And I had no idea that this was a competition because he had multiple degrees. And I have more than one degree as well, but he
Hmm.
had like 2 times the degrees I have. So I didn't understand that we were in a competition. So
So
when
he
I
was established
Mhm.
okay, academically,
Yes.
professionally,
Yes.
financially. Now, and I know there's guys out there that have to be, I don't want to say alpha, but
Mhm.
breadwinner and in control and all that stuff.